Royal security breach. Guard makes disturbing discovery involving Princess Charlotte. Best story. Soft lights glowed along long corridors, reflecting off polished floors that had seen generations of footsteps. Most of the royal household had retired for the evening. Doors were closed, curtains drawn, and the quiet hum of security systems filled the silence. On the surface, it was just another ordinary night. For the guards on duty, however, ordinary never meant careless. Every shift followed strict routines. Every movement had a purpose. One of those guards was a man who had served for many years. He was not new, not reckless, and not easily impressed. Experience had taught him that danger rarely announced itself loudly. It came quietly, hidden inside small details most people ignored. He began his patrol just after the shift change. His uniform was neat, his posture straight, and his expression calm. He walked at a steady pace, eyes scanning corners, doors, and screens as he passed. The palace was large, almost like a small city, and protecting it required constant attention. Cameras watched every angle. Sensors monitored every entrance. Logs recorded every movement. Still, the guard trusted his own eyes more than any machine. As he passed one of the control panels, something caught his attention. A small indicator light blinked briefly before returning to normal. It was the kind of thing many guards would overlook. Systems sometimes did that. Power levels changed, signals refreshed, but this guard paused. He stepped closer and looked again. Everything appeared normal now, but the uneasy feeling stayed with him. He checked the time and compared it to the activity log. Nothing unusual stood out at first. No alarms, no warnings, no reports from other posts. Still, the sense of discomfort refused to fade. He told himself not to jump to conclusions, yet he also knew that ignoring instincts had consequences. He made a mental note and continued his patrol. The corridor ahead was quiet, lined with portraits and tall windows. Moonlight spilled through the glass, casting long shadows across the floor. The guard's footsteps echoed softly as he walked. This area was near private family quarters, a place that required extra care. Access here was limited, and security was tighter than in other parts of the palace. He slowed his pace and checked another panel mounted on the wall. Again, everything appeared fine. But when he reviewed the access records more closely, he noticed a small gap in the timeline. It was only a few seconds, almost nothing, but it shouldn't have been there. The system usually recorded every action without fail. The guard frowned slightly. A few seconds could mean a simple system refresh, or it could mean something else. He knew better than to assume. Carefully, he pulled up the backup records. They matched the main log, but the gap remained. No explanation appeared. He took a deep breath and continued walking, now fully alert. His training reminded him that security was not about panic but about awareness. The palace had been safe for years and incidents were rare, but rare did not mean impossible. As he approached a junction where several hallways met, he paused again. The air felt still, but something about the space seemed different. He listened closely. No voices. No footsteps. No movement. Yet the feeling of being slightly out of place lingered. He turned toward a hallway connected to areas used during the day by younger members of the royal family. At night, this section was usually silent and untouched. He checked the door at the entrance. It was closed as expected. The lock indicator showed green, meaning secure. Still, he tested it gently. It did not move. That was good. But when he stepped back and looked again, he noticed a faint mark near the handle, as if it had been touched more recently than expected. It was not obvious, and it could have meant nothing. Cleaning staff passed through earlier in the evening. Yet the timing did not fully add up. The guard's heart beat a little faster, though his face remained calm. He reminded himself to think clearly. There was no sign of immediate danger, no alarms, no disturbance. But his role was to prevent problems, not respond after it was too late. He decided to check the cameras covering the area. Moving to a nearby security station, he brought up the live feed and then rewound the footage. He watched carefully, scanning each frame. Most of it showed nothing but empty hallways and steady lights. Then he saw it, a brief flicker. The camera did not go dark, but the image shifted slightly, almost like a skipped breath. It lasted less than a second. After that, the hallway looked exactly the same. To an untrained eye, it would mean nothing. To him, it meant the system had momentarily lost full clarity. Whether it was a technical issue or something else, he could not say yet. But combined with the access log gap and the indicator light, it formed a pattern he could not ignore. He straightened his shoulders and made a quiet decision. He would continue his patrol, but with extra attention on this section. He did not raise an alarm yet. Protocol required certainty, not guesses. Still, he prepared himself mentally to act fast if needed. As he walked back into the corridor, he felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on him. Protecting the palace was not just about walls and doors. It was about the people inside, especially the youngest ones, who trusted that the world around them was safe. He passed another guard at a distance and exchanged a brief nod. Nothing in his expression revealed concern. Training taught them calm first, questions later. Panic spread faster than truth. The guard reached the end of the hallway and turned back, taking one last look around. Everything remained quiet. Too quiet, perhaps. He checked his watch again. Only a few minutes had passed, yet the night already felt longer. As he resumed his patrol, his thoughts stayed focused. If there was a weakness, he would find it. If there was a simple explanation, he would confirm it. Either way, he knew one thing clearly. Ignoring small signs was never an option. Behind the closed doors of the palace, the royal family slept peacefully, unaware of the silent watch continuing outside. Princess Charlotte, like any child, rested under layers of protection built by people who took their duty seriously. The guard understood that his role might never be noticed, never praised, and never spoken about publicly. That was how it was supposed to be. Yet as he moved through the quiet halls, he sensed that this night would not be forgotten easily. Something had shifted, however slightly, and by paying attention to what others might overlook, he had taken the first step toward uncovering a truth that could change everything that followed. The palace remained calm, lights steady, and walls unmoving. But beneath that calm surface, questions had already begun to form, questions that would not let go until they were answered. And for the guard on duty, the night was far from over. The guard did not rush. He had learned long ago that moving too fast could cause mistakes. Instead, he slowed his steps and sharpened his focus. The palace was still quiet, but now the quiet felt different. It was no longer peaceful. It felt watchful, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. He returned to the security station and checked the system again, this time more carefully. He reviewed door sensors, motion logs, and camera feeds one by one. Everything looked normal on the surface. No alarms had been triggered. No warnings appeared on the screen. That alone made him uneasy. When systems worked perfectly, it usually meant nothing had happened. But when small signs appeared and disappeared without explanation, that was when real problems hid. He adjusted his headset and quietly contacted another guard stationed nearby. He did not mention danger or concern. He simply asked if anything unusual had been noticed during the last hour. The response came quickly and calmly. No issues reported. Everything was normal. The guard thanked him and ended the call. He trusted his fellow guards, but he also trusted his instincts. Experience had taught him that problems did not always appear clearly to everyone at the same time. Sometimes only one person noticed the first crack. He decided to walk the route again, this time in reverse. He believed patterns revealed themselves when viewed from different angles. As he moved through the corridors, he paid close attention to details others might ignore. The shine of the floor, the position of doors, the sound of air moving through vents. As he neared the private family area again, he paused. A faint sound reached his ears. It was not loud and could easily be mistaken for the building settling or pipes adjusting. Still, he stopped and listened. The sound did not repeat. Silence returned. He approached the door once more and checked the lock indicator. Green, secure. He leaned closer and examined the panel. There were no signs of forced entry, no damage, no scratches. Everything looked untouched. That should have reassured him. Instead, it raised more questions. If something had gone wrong, it was not obvious, and hidden problems were often the most dangerous. He stepped away and checked the nearby camera again, this time watching the live feed while standing in the exact same place. The image showed the hallway exactly as it appeared in real life, empty, calm, still. Then he noticed something small. The camera angle was slightly off. It was barely noticeable, just a few degrees different from where it should have been. Cameras in the palace were fixed and rarely moved. Adjusting one required access and effort. The guard's jaw tightened slightly. This was no longer just a technical issue. Someone, at some point, had touched that camera. Whether it was during maintenance or something else, he did not know yet. But he knew one thing. It should have been documented. He checked the maintenance logs. The last recorded inspection had taken place earlier in the week. No adjustments were listed since then. The timing did not match. He felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. This was not about rules or reports anymore. This was about safety. The palace held many important people, but protecting children required the highest level of care. Even the smallest gap could have serious consequences. He contacted his supervisor, choosing his words carefully. He reported irregular system behavior and requested permission to perform a deeper inspection of the area. He did not mention names. He did not raise alarm. He simply explained that he needed to confirm everything was secure. Permission was granted. With that, he began a more thorough check. He inspected secondary locks, backup sensors, and hidden access points built into the old structure of the palace. The building was beautiful, but its age meant it had many layers. Some passages were known only to staff and security teams. As he moved through a service corridor, he noticed a door that was slightly warmer to the touch than others. That might have meant someone had passed through recently. He checked the access panel. The log showed an authorized entry earlier in the evening. The name attached was familiar and trusted. That made things more complicated. The guard paused. Trust was important, but security depended on verification, not assumptions. He knew that sometimes systems recorded authorized access even when procedures were not followed correctly. Mistakes happened. People became careless. That was often how weaknesses formed. He reviewed the timing. The authorized entry had occurred close to the moment when the earlier system gap appeared. The connection was too strong to ignore. Carefully, he followed the path that access would have allowed. It led near the area used by Princess Charlotte during the day. At night, she would be resting elsewhere, fully protected, but the route itself mattered. Any weakness near her routine was unacceptable. The guard's mind remained calm, but his heart beat steadily with focus. He reminded himself that there was still no sign of harm, no alarms, no emergency. His job was to keep it that way. He stopped near another camera and checked its position. This one was correct. He compared it with the earlier camera and confirmed his concern. One had been adjusted slightly, the other had not. That ruled out system-wide error. He documented everything quietly, taking notes and timestamps. Every detail mattered. He knew that his report would be reviewed carefully, and he wanted facts, not feelings, to guide the response. As he worked, he thought about how easily things could be missed in a place where everyone assumed safety was guaranteed. The palace was strong, but no place was perfect. Security was not about fear. It was about attention. The guard finished his inspection and returned to the security station. He sent a detailed update to his supervisor, requesting a full system review at first light. He also recommended increased monitoring of the affected area until everything was confirmed safe. Before ending his shift, he walked the corridor one last time. The palace remained calm. Lights glowed softly. Doors stayed closed. There was no sign that anything dangerous had occurred. Yet the guard knew better than to relax completely. He understood now that the problem was not an outside threat. It was something quieter and more unsettling, a weakness that had formed unnoticed. Whether it came from routine work, human error, or system oversight, it had created a moment of risk. As dawn slowly approached, the guard remained alert. He stood at his post, watching screens and listening carefully. Others might see only another peaceful night. He saw a warning that had arrived softly and left questions behind. Princess Charlotte remained safe, unaware of the careful eyes watching over every detail of her world. The guard took some comfort in that, but he also knew that what he had discovered could not be ignored. This was only the beginning. The truth behind the irregularities still waited to be uncovered, and until it was, the guard would not let his attention drift, even for a moment. Morning light slowly entered the palace, soft and pale, touching the walls that had stood for centuries. For most people inside, the new day began as usual. Staff prepared for their duties and the building gently woke from its quiet night. But for the guard, the night had never truly ended. He remained focused, carrying the weight of unanswered questions. As his shift continued, senior security staff arrived. The guard briefed them calmly, sharing every detail he had recorded. He showed them the access gaps, the camera angle change, and the timing that did not make sense. He did not accuse anyone. He did not guess. He simply presented facts. The security team listened closely. Their expressions remained serious but controlled. They understood the importance of what he had found. A small weakness, especially near a child's routine, was not small at all. It demanded immediate attention. They decided to quietly check the systems together. No alarms were raised. No panic was spread. The palace continued its normal rhythm while the investigation moved beneath the surface. The team began with the access system. They checked every record linked to the unusual entry. The name attached belonged to a trusted staff member who had worked at the palace for years. That alone made the situation more sensitive. Trust was important, but safety came first. When the staff member was spoken to later that morning, the conversation was respectful and calm. The person appeared confused. According to their memory, they had followed routine instructions and left the area long before the time recorded in the system. They had not adjusted any camera or stayed longer than required. This raised new concerns. The security team checked the system settings again. They discovered that during a recent software update, a small feature had not been properly configured. It allowed certain actions to be recorded in a delayed or incomplete way. The system did not fail completely. It worked just well enough to hide its weakness. The guard felt a cold realization settle in his chest. This was the disturbing truth. There was no intruder. There was no clear threat from outside. The danger came from inside the system itself, from something everyone trusted without question. One camera had been adjusted during routine work days earlier. The change had not been noticed because the system did not flag it properly. The access log gap had appeared because the software did not fully record overlapping actions. Alone, each issue meant little. Together, they created a window of uncertainty. The guard looked at the screen showing the quiet hallway. Princess Charlotte had never been in danger at that exact moment. She had been in a secure location, protected by multiple layers of safety. That knowledge brought relief, but relief did not erase the seriousness of what they had uncovered. If someone with bad intentions had known about the weakness, the outcome could have been very different. The room grew quiet as everyone understood the weight of that thought. The palace had always been a symbol of strength and protection. Yet even strong places depended on people and people and systems could fail. The guard felt no pride, only responsibility. He did not think about praise or recognition. He thought about what could have happened if he had ignored that blinking light, that small feeling of discomfort. The idea made his stomach tighten. Senior staff ordered an immediate full review of all security systems. Every camera, every sensor, every access point would be checked and corrected. Temporary measures were put in place to increase monitoring, especially around areas connected to the children's routines. The guard remained involved throughout the process. He walked the corridors with technicians, answering questions and pointing out details he had noticed. His calm focus earned quiet respect. He was not dramatic, he was careful. That made all the difference. Later that day, he stood once more in the hallway near the family area. The camera had been reset. The angle was perfect now. New alerts were active. The system responded exactly as it should. Still, the guard did not relax. He thought about how easily safety could be taken for granted. When nothing went wrong for a long time, people assumed nothing ever would. That belief was the real danger. Princess Charlotte passed through a different corridor that afternoon, laughing softly with a staff member. She looked like any child, unaware of systems, logs, or cameras. That innocence was exactly what made her worth protecting so carefully. The guard watched from a respectful distance, his expression steady. He felt a quiet promise form inside him. As long as he stood watch, he would never stop noticing the small things. The investigation concluded with clear findings. No harm had occurred. No rules had been intentionally broken, but a weakness had existed and it had gone unnoticed for too long. That knowledge changed how the security team viewed their work. Procedures were rewritten. Training was updated. No detail would be considered too small again. For the guard, the experience left a deeper mark. He understood now that real danger often wore the mask of routine. It hid behind trust, habit, and comfort. Only attention could reveal it. As evening returned and the palace settled once more into quiet, the guard began another shift. The halls looked the same. The lights glowed as they always had. But to him, everything felt different. He was no longer just walking familiar paths. He was guarding against what could not be seen at first glance. And he knew that sometimes, the most disturbing discoveries were not about what happened, but about what almost did. The palace stood strong, calm, and secure. Inside it, a lesson had been learned, one that would shape every step taken from that day forward. The days that followed were quiet on the surface, but behind the palace walls, everything moved with careful purpose. The security team worked steadily, reviewing every procedure that had been followed for years without question. They did not act in fear. They acted with focus and responsibility. What had been discovered was not a failure of effort, but a reminder that safety required constant attention. The guard continued his duties as usual, yet his role had subtly changed. Senior officers now asked for his opinion more often. They valued his ability to notice details and remain calm under pressure. He did not speak loudly or confidently about himself. He spoke clearly about facts, patterns, and prevention. Technicians spent long hours testing systems. Cameras were checked one by one. Sensors were recalibrated. Software was updated carefully with every change recorded and reviewed. Nothing was rushed. The goal was not speed but certainty. The palace never stopped functioning during this time. Events were held. Staff followed routines. Members of the royal family continued their daily lives. The difference was invisible to most, but real. Extra layers of protection were now active, quietly reinforcing what had always been there. The guard noticed the change in atmosphere among the security team. There was less casual conversation and more quiet observation. Everyone understood the importance of their work a little more deeply. The incident had reminded them why their training mattered. One afternoon, the guard attended a private briefing. Senior security leaders explained the long-term adjustments that would be made. Patrol routes would vary more often. System alerts would be reviewed manually as well as digitally. Staff access levels would be reevaluated regularly instead of automatically renewed. The guard listened carefully. These were not dramatic changes, but they were strong ones. They addressed the real issue. Comfort had slowly replaced caution. Now, caution had returned. After the meeting, the guard walked through the palace once more. He paid attention to how the building felt. The corridors were familiar, yet they seemed sharper, more alive. Every sound mattered. Every shadow had meaning. He passed a group of staff members moving supplies. Their laughter echoed softly. Life went on as it should. The guard understood that security worked best when it stayed in the background. When it did its job, no one noticed. Later that day, Princess Charlotte moved through a nearby hallway, accompanied by a trusted staff member. She carried a small book and spoke quietly, her voice light and calm. The guard stepped aside respectfully, offering a brief nod. In that moment, he felt the full meaning of his work. This was why small details mattered. This was why instincts mattered. Protecting a child meant protecting a future that was still being written. The guard did not think about the past incident as a crisis anymore. He saw it as a turning point. It had revealed something important without causing harm. That was rare, and it deserved respect. As weeks passed, the changes became permanent. New checks were added to daily routines. Reports were reviewed more carefully. No system was assumed to be flawless again. The guard trained younger officers, sharing lessons without blame or fear. He explained how attention to detail could prevent problems before they formed. He reminded them that technology was a tool, not a replacement for human awareness. His words were simple, but they stayed with those who listened. One evening, during another quiet shift, the guard paused in the same corridor where everything had begun. The camera above him remained steady. The access panel responded instantly. The system worked exactly as it should. Still, he stood there for a moment longer than necessary. He understood now that safety was not a fixed state. It was a process, one that needed care every single day. He also understood that his actions, though unseen by most, had made a difference. The palace lights dimmed as night returned. Doors were secured. Silence settled gently across the building. The guard continued his patrol, steady and alert. There were no strange signals, no unexplained gaps, no uneasy feelings. That was a good thing, but he did not let comfort dull his focus. Somewhere inside the palace, Princess Charlotte slept peacefully, surrounded by layers of protection strengthened by quiet decisions and careful work. She would never know the details of what had happened. She did not need to. The guard accepted that without regret. His reward was not recognition. It was knowing that the world inside those walls was safer because he had paid attention. As the night passed, the palace remained calm. And for the first time since that small blinking light had appeared, the guard felt a quiet sense of balance return. The lesson had been learned. The changes had been made. Yet even then, he knew one truth would never change. Vigilance was not a moment. It was a commitment. Time moved forward as it always did, steady and quiet inside the palace. Weeks turned into months, and the memory of the security issue slowly faded from daily conversation. There were no news reports, no rumors, no signs that anything unusual had ever happened. To the outside world, everything appeared exactly the same. That was how it was meant to be. For the guard, however, the experience never truly left him. It stayed in the way he walked, the way he watched, and the way he listened. He had returned fully to his normal duties, but his understanding of those duties had deepened. He no longer saw his role as simply following routine. He saw it as standing between safety and uncertainty. The palace had settled into a stronger rhythm. Systems worked smoothly. Procedures were followed carefully. Every guard knew why each step mattered. There was no fear in the air, only awareness. That was the balanced security always aimed for. One quiet afternoon, the guard stood near a window overlooking the gardens. Sunlight touched the grass, and the sound of distant footsteps echoed softly through the halls. Staff members moved calmly, carrying out their work as they always had. Life inside the palace felt peaceful, even ordinary. He knew how fragile that feeling could be. Princess Charlotte passed through the garden later that day, laughing as she followed a small path with a trusted adult nearby. Her laughter was light and free, untouched by concern. She stopped to look at flowers, curious and focused in the way children are. For a moment the guard simply watched from a respectful distance. He felt something warm settle in his chest, not pride but reassurance. This was the purpose of his work, not the systems, not the reports. But moments like this, where a child could move through the world without fear. He turned away quietly and continued his patrol. As the months passed, the palace welcomed visitors, hosted events, and marked important occasions. None of it disrupted the calm protection that surrounded the family. The changes made after the incident blended naturally into daily operations. They did not stand out. They simply worked. The guard trained new officers when needed, sharing lessons gently and clearly. He never spoke about the incident as something dramatic. He spoke about it as a reminder. Pay attention. Ask questions. Trust your instincts but confirm with facts. Those lessons spread quietly, just like the work itself. One evening, near the end of a long shift, the guard returned once more to the corridor where everything had started. It looked exactly the same as it always had. Clean floors, soft lights, silent walls. Nothing hinted at what had once been hidden there. He stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet. There were no alerts, no strange signals, no reason to stay longer than necessary. And yet, he paused, reflecting on how close small things could come to becoming serious ones. He understood now that the most important discoveries were often invisible to others. They happened in silence, guided by attention and care. They did not demand applause. They demanded responsibility. As he resumed walking, he felt a sense of closure. Not because the risk had been eliminated forever. No place could promise that. But because the lesson had been learned and honored. The palace was stronger not because it was perfect, but because it had faced its weakness honestly. Later that night, as the building settled into rest, the guard completed his final checks. Doors were secure. Systems responded instantly. Everything was as it should be. He removed his headset and prepared to end his shift. Another guard would take his place, continuing the quiet work that never truly stopped. Protection was a shared duty, passed from one careful pair of eyes to another. Before leaving, he took one last look at the security screens. The images showed calm hallways and steady lights. Somewhere beyond those walls, Princess Charlotte slept peacefully, unaware of the countless unseen efforts that kept her world safe. That thought stayed with him as he stepped outside into the cool night air. The guard knew his name would never appear in a report meant for the public. No story would be told about the small signs he noticed or the decisions he made. And that was fine. Real security did not need attention. It needed dedication. As he walked away, he felt no tension, only quiet resolve. Tomorrow would bring another shift, another routine, another chance to pay attention. He would be ready just as he always had been. Inside the palace, the lights dimmed further and silence settled gently once more. Strong walls stood firm, but it was the human care within them that truly mattered. The story ended not with drama, but with peace. A peace protected by people who understood that safety was not a single moment, but a promise renewed every day.